The young farm girl froze when she was forced to marry the millionaire's son to teach her a lesson. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the tall windows of the Caldwell mansion, but inside those marble walls, there was no warmth. Richard Caldwell stood alone in his study, a room that smelled of leather and old regrets, holding a photograph that had grown soft at the edges from too much handling over the years. In the picture, a little girl with bright eyes smiled up at him. Sophie, 5 years old, wearing a yellow sundress, her tiny hand wrapped around his finger. That was the last good day. The day before everything fell apart. 20 years, 2 decades of searching, of false leads, of hope that slowly bled into something darker. The police had given up after the first year. His ex-wife had given up after 2, remarrying and moving to Europe, unable to live in the shadow of their loss. But Richard, he'd never stopped looking. Not really. The problem was, somewhere along the way, he'd lost his son too. Brandon had been 8 when Sophie disappeared. Too young to understand, too old to forget. The boy had grown up watching his father chase a ghost, building an empire to fill the emptiness, throwing money at investigators who came back empty-handed every single time, and Brandon had learned all the wrong lessons from it. If money couldn't bring Sophie back, at least it could buy everything else. That's what the kid figured out. And he'd been proving it ever since. Richard set the photograph down carefully, like it might shatter, and pressed the button on his desk phone. Send Brandon in. 3 minutes passed, then 5. Richard wasn't surprised. Making people wait was Brandon's signature move these days. A petty little power play that would have been funny if it wasn't so damn sad. When the door finally swung open, Brandon strolled in like he owned the place. Which, technically, he would someday, if Richard didn't strangle him first. You rang. Brandon's tone was light, mocking. He dropped into the leather chair across from the desk without being asked. One leg crossed over the other, looking every bit the spoiled rich kid he'd become. At 28, he had his mother's sharp features and Richard's dark eyes, but there was something hollow behind them, something that partying and spending couldn't quite cover up. We need to talk. We're talking. Richard bit back the sharp response that wanted to come out. Getting angry wouldn't help. He'd tried that 100 times before. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and studied his son, really looked at him. The expensive watch, the designer clothes, the carefully styled hair, all of it bought with money Brandon hadn't earned, living a life he hadn't built. You're getting married. The words hung in the air like smoke. Brandon's smirk faltered for just a second before sliding back into place. That's hilarious. Who's the lucky girl? One of your country club friend's daughters. Maybe that senator's niece you keep bringing up at dinner. No. Richard's voice was steady, final. You're going to marry a girl from the countryside, a farm girl, someone who knows what it means to work, to build something with her own hands. Maybe then you'll learn what money can't teach you. The smirk disappeared completely now. Brandon sat forward, his expression shifting from amused to confused to something close to angry. You're joking. Do I look like I'm joking? Dad, what the hell? Her name is Emily Harper, Richard continued, pulling a thin folder from his desk drawer. He slid it across the polished wood. 25 years old, grew up on a small farm about 300 miles from here. She's been taking care of the land since she was a teenager, supporting an elderly woman who raised her. They're drowning in debt. Medical bills, mostly. Brandon didn't touch the folder. He just stared at it like it was a snake. You've lost your mind. Maybe I have. Richard stood up, walking to the window. Outside, the estate stretched out like a kingdom. Manicured lawns, gardens, the stables in the distance, all of it built on land that used to grow corn and wheat. Back when his grandfather first started the company, back when the Caldwell name meant something more than just money. You think I don't see what you've become, Richard said quietly, his back still to his son. You think I don't know about the parties, the gambling, the girls whose names you can't remember the next morning. You're 28 years old, and you've never worked a real day in your life. You've never built anything, never fought for anything. You just take. And whose fault is that? Brandon's voice had an edge now, sharp and bitter. You were the one who threw money at everything. You think I didn't notice? Every time I wanted your attention, you bought me something instead. Every time I screwed up, you paid someone to fix it. You made me this way, Dad. Don't act surprised now. The words hit harder than Richard wanted to admit, because there was truth in them. Uncomfortable, ugly truth. You're right, Richard said, turning around. I failed you after Sophie. I didn't know how to be a father anymore. I was so busy trying to find her, trying to fix what I'd broken, that I let you slip through my fingers too. He paused, his voice rougher now. But I'm not failing you again. This is your last chance, Brandon. Marry this girl. Learn from her. Become the man I should have taught you to be. Or what? Brandon stood up, his hands clenched. You'll cut me off, disown me, go ahead. I'll be fine. No, you won't. Richard's voice was sad, not angry. You'll burn through whatever you have in 6 months. And then what? You don't know how to do anything, son. You never learned. You'll end up bitter and broken, blaming everyone but yourself. Is that really what you want? Brandon opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time in years, he looked uncertain, young. This isn't a punishment, Richard said more softly. It's a chance. Meet her. Get to know her. Maybe you'll surprise yourself. And if I say no? Richard picked up the photograph of Sophie, held it for a moment, then set it down. Then you walk out that door and you don't come back. No more trust fund, no more job at the company, no more Caldwell name on your credit cards. You'll be on your own, completely, and I think we both know how that ends. The silence stretched between them like a canyon. Finally, Brandon grabbed the folder off the desk. He didn't open it. When? 2 weeks, she'll arrive next Monday. Brandon let out a bitter laugh. You've already arranged everything, of course you have. He headed for the door, then stopped. Looking back, did you ever think that maybe I needed you more than I needed your money? Did that ever cross your mind? Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving Richard alone with his ghosts and his regrets, 300 miles away. Emily Harper wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked out over the cornfield. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange, the way it always did this time of year. It was beautiful, in a way that made her chest ache. This land was all she knew. Every row of corn, every fence post, every stone in the creek bed. She'd mapped it all in her mind over 20 years. Miss Rose had found her on the road when she was 5, dirty and crying and alone, and had taken her in without asking questions. This farm, this simple life, had saved her. Now it was dying. Emily heard the truck before she saw it, an expensive rumble that didn't belong on their dirt road. She shaded her eyes, watching as a black SUV pulled up to the farmhouse. 2 men in suits got out. Her heart sank. Miss Harper, the taller one called out. Emily set down her basket of corn and walked toward them, her boots kicking up dust. That's me. We're here on behalf of Richard Caldwell. He'd like to make you a proposal. Emily's stomach twisted. She'd heard that name before. Everyone had. The Caldwell family owned half the agricultural land in the state. They were the kind of rich that didn't feel real. What kind of proposal? The man pulled out an envelope, thick and official looking. It's all explained in here. But the short version is this. Mr. Caldwell's son needs a wife. You fit the requirements. In exchange for marrying him, all of your debts will be cleared. Medical bills, property taxes, everything. You'll be financially secure for life. Emily felt like she'd been slapped. You're joking. We're not. I don't even know his son. I don't know any of you people. You don't have to love him, the man said plainly. You just have to marry him. Think of it as a business arrangement. Emily wanted to laugh or scream, or maybe both. Get off my property. Miss Harper. I said get out. They left. But the envelope stayed behind, sitting on the porch railing like a snake in the grass. That night, Miss Rose got worse. The coughing fit lasted 20 minutes, and when it finally stopped, there was blood on the handkerchief. The old woman looked so small in her bed, so fragile. We don't have money for more treatment, Miss Rose whispered. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. Emily held her hand, tears running down her face. The next morning, she opened the envelope, and 3 days later, she said yes. The drive from the farm to the Caldwell estate took 4 hours, but to Emily, it felt like crossing into another world entirely. Miss Rose had insisted on helping her pack, folding Emily's few decent dresses with shaking hands. tears sliding down her weathered cheeks. "You don't have to do this," the old woman had whispered for the 100th time, but they both knew that wasn't true. Now, sitting in the back of the town car Richard had sent, Emily watched the landscape change through the tinted windows. The flat farmland gradually gave way to rolling hills, then to manicured suburbs, and finally to something that looked more like a movie set than a place where real people lived. The Caldwell mansion rose up behind iron gates like a monument to excess. White marble columns, perfectly trimmed hedges, a fountain in the circular driveway that probably cost more than Emily's entire farm. She felt her chest tighten. The driver opened her door. "Miss Harper." Emily stepped out, clutching her single suitcase, battered brown leather that had been Miss Rose's decades ago. She wore her best dress, a simple cotton thing in pale blue that suddenly felt impossibly cheap. The afternoon sun was hot on her shoulders, but she felt cold all over. A woman in a crisp black suit approached, her smile professionally polite. "Miss Harper." "Welcome. I'm Mrs. Chen, the house manager. Mr. Caldwell is waiting for you in the main parlor. If you'll follow me." Emily nodded, not trusting her voice. The inside of the mansion was worse than the outside. Everything gleamed. The marble floors, the crystal chandelier, the gold-framed paintings on the walls, her boots, dusty from the farm, left faint prints on the pristine floor. She wanted to disappear. Mrs. Chen led her through a maze of hallways to a room that was probably called a parlor, but looked more like a museum. And there, standing by the window with his back to her, was a man who could only be Richard Caldwell. He turned when they entered, and Emily felt a strange jolt of recognition that made no sense. She'd never met this man before, but something about the way he stood, the angle of his jaw, Emily. His voice was rougher than she'd expected, almost kind. "Thank you for coming. I didn't have much choice," she said quietly, then immediately regretted it. "Be polite," she reminded herself. "You need this." But Richard just nodded, like he appreciated the honesty. "No, I suppose you didn't. I'm sorry about that. About all of this, really. It's not..." He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "It's not how I wanted things to go." "Then why are you doing it?" "Because my son needs to learn something I failed to teach him. And because..." He stopped, studying her face in a way that made her uncomfortable. "You remind me of someone." Before Emily could ask what he meant, the door swung open with enough force to bang against the wall. So this is her. The man who walked in was nothing like his father. Where Richard carried himself with tired dignity, this one moved like he was performing for an invisible audience. Expensive jeans, a shirt that probably cost more than Emily made in a month, and an expression that made her want to slap him. Brandon Caldwell looked her up and down like she was livestock at an auction. "This is your brilliant idea, Dad. A farm girl in a dollar store dress to teach me about humility." The words were meant to wound, and they did. Emily felt heat rise in her cheeks, felt the old shame that came from being poor in a world that worshipped money. But she'd been dealing with people who looked down on her since she was 5 years old. She knew how to stand her ground. "I didn't ask to be here," she said, meeting his eyes. "I came because my family needs help, not because I was dying to meet some spoiled rich boy who thinks money makes him special. So don't mistake me for someone who's impressed by you, Mr. Caldwell. I'm not." The room went silent. Richard made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. And Brandon looked like he'd been slapped. His expression shifted through several emotions too fast to read, finally landing on something that might have been respect, or maybe just surprise that someone had talked back to him. "Well," he said, after a long moment, "at least you've got a spine. More than one, actually. It's how vertebrates work." This time Richard did laugh, a short bark of genuine amusement. "I think I'm going to like you, Emily." Brandon shot his father a look that could have curdled milk, then turned back to Emily. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, and something strange happened. His expression shifted, not to anger or amusement, but to confusion, like he'd forgotten what he was going to say. He took a step closer, and Emily instinctively took a step back, not because she was afraid exactly, but because something felt wrong, off balance, like standing too close to the edge of something she couldn't see. Brandon must have felt it too, because he stopped, his brow furrowing. "Have we met before?" "Pretty sure I'd remember." Emily said dryly. But even as she said it, she wasn't entirely certain. There was something about his eyes, dark brown, almost black, that tugged at a memory she couldn't quite reach, like a word on the tip of her tongue that wouldn't come. "Brandon," Richard said quietly, "why don't you show Emily to her room? She's had a long journey." Brandon looked like he wanted to argue, but something in his father's expression stopped him. "Fine, follow me." He walked out without checking to see if she was coming. Emily grabbed her suitcase and hurried after him, leaving Richard standing alone in the parlor. The walk through the mansion was silent and uncomfortable. Brandon moved quickly, like he was trying to outpace her, but Emily kept up. She'd spent her whole life working on a farm. A little speed walking through an oversized house wasn't going to break her. Finally, he stopped in front of a door and pushed it open. "This is you." Emily stepped inside and almost gasped. The room was bigger than the entire farmhouse kitchen. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, covered in silk sheets that looked like they'd never been slept in. Windows stretched from floor to ceiling, offering a view of gardens that seemed to go on forever. "The bathroom's through there," Brandon said, pointing. "Mrs. Chen will bring up your things. Dinner's at 7. Try not to embarrass us." He was already turning to leave when Emily spoke. "Why do you hate me so much?" Brandon stopped. Slowly, he turned back around. "I don't hate you. Could have fooled me. I don't know you well enough to hate you." His voice was flat, emotionless. "But I know what you are. Someone who saw an opportunity and took it. Can't really blame you for that, I guess. I'd probably do the same." "You don't know anything about me," Emily said. And she was surprised by how much anger leaked into her voice. "You don't know what it's like to watch someone you love dying because you can't afford medicine. You don't know what it's like to work until your hands bleed and still not have enough. So don't stand there and judge me for accepting help when I had no other choice." Something flickered across Brandon's face. Guilt, maybe, or shame. But it was gone before Emily could be sure. "You're right," he said quietly. "I don't know what that's like. I've never had to." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was different, softer. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About your family, about all of this." Then he left, closing the door behind him with a soft click. Emily stood alone in the enormous room, surrounded by luxury that felt like a cage, and tried not to cry. That's when she noticed it. The mirror on the wall, ornate and gold-framed. She walked over to it, studying her reflection. Pale blue dress, dusty boots, hair falling out of its braid. She looked exactly like what she was, a farm girl playing dress-up in a world that didn't want her. Her hand went automatically to her neck, to the pendant she always wore, a small gold circle with the letter S engraved on it. She'd had it as long as she could remember, the only thing from before Miss Rose found her. Sometimes she dreamed about it, about a man's voice saying something she couldn't quite hear. The door opened without warning. Emily spun around, expecting Mrs. Chen. It was Richard. His eyes went immediately to the pendant at her throat, and all the color drained from his face. "Where did you get that?" His voice was barely a whisper. Emily's hand closed protectively over the pendant. "It's mine. I've always had it." "That's not possible." Richard took a step forward, then another, like he was being pulled by invisible strings. "I had 2 of those made 20 years ago, one for me." He reached into his shirt, pulling out an identical pendant. "And one for my daughter." The room tilted. "What?" Emily heard herself say. Richard's hands were shaking. "The day Sophie disappeared, she was wearing that pendant. I'd just given it to her that morning. She was so proud of it. Kept touching it, making sure it was still there." His voice cracked. "Where did you get it, Emily? Please, I need to know." I don't remember." Emily's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. "Miss Rose said I was wearing it when she found me. I was 5 years old, alone on a road, crying. I don't remember anything before that." The silence that followed was so complete that Emily could hear her own heartbeat. Richard reached out, then stopped himself, his hand hovering in the air between them. "How old are you? 25? When's your birthday?" "I don't know. Miss Rose picked a day. March 15th. Sophie's birthday," Richard whispered, "was March 12th. Emily felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her. This couldn't be happening. This was insane. but Richard was staring at her like he was seeing a ghost, and Emily realized with a cold shock that maybe, just maybe, he was. Emily didn't sleep that night. She lay in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, Richard's words echoing in her head. Sophie's birthday was March 12th. The pendant felt heavy against her chest, like it was made of lead instead of gold. It was impossible. It had to be. Just a coincidence. A cruel, impossible coincidence. But when she closed her eyes, she saw fragments. A man's face, blurred at the edges. The smell of expensive cologne. A deep voice humming something she couldn't quite remember. And underneath it all, a feeling she couldn't name. Something that felt like home. She gave up on sleep around 5 and took a shower that felt like standing in warm rain. The bathroom alone was bigger than her bedroom back at the farm, all marble and gold fixtures. It should have felt luxurious. Instead, it felt lonely. By 6:30, she was dressed in the only other decent outfit she'd brought, a simple white blouse and dark jeans. She found her way downstairs, following the smell of coffee. The kitchen was enormous, industrial-sized, but currently occupied by only one person. Mrs. Chen looked up from the espresso machine and smiled. "Miss Harper, you're up early." "Couldn't sleep." Emily hesitated. "Is it okay if I'm down here?" "Of course, this is your home now." Mrs. Chen poured coffee into a delicate china cup. "Cream, sugar, black is fine." Emily took the cup gratefully. The first sip was the best thing she'd tasted in days. "Thank you." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Mrs. Chen said quietly, "Mr. Caldwell told me about the pendant." Emily's hand went automatically to her throat. "Oh, he didn't sleep either. I heard him in his study all night." Mrs. Chen's expression was kind. "He's a good man, Miss Harper." "What happened to his daughter?" "It broke something in him. Please be patient with him." "I don't know what he expects from me," Emily said. "I'm not her. Even if..." She couldn't finish the sentence. It felt too big, too impossible. "Maybe not. But maybe you're exactly who this family needs." Before Emily could ask what that meant, Brandon walked in. He stopped when he saw her, and for just a second, that same confused expression crossed his face, like he was trying to remember something just out of reach. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual mask of bored indifference. "You're up early," he said, heading straight for the coffee. "Farm habit. We don't sleep in past sunrise." "Sounds exhausting." He took his coffee and leaned against the counter, studying her. "So, my father told you about the pendant." It wasn't a question. Emily nodded. "And what do you think?" "I think it's a coincidence." "Do you?" Brandon's voice was neutral, but his eyes were sharp. "Because Dad doesn't. He's already called every private investigator in the state. He's going to tear your entire past apart looking for answers." Emily felt her stomach drop. "He can't. I mean, I don't have anything to hide, but you don't want strangers digging through your life, I get it." Brandon took a sip of coffee. "For what it's worth, I don't think you're Sophie." "Why not?" "Because Sophie would be my sister, and I don't..." He stopped, that confused expression flickering across his face again. "I don't feel like you're my sister." There was something odd in the way he said it, like he was trying to convince himself. Mrs. Chen cleared her throat diplomatically. "Breakfast will be ready in 30 minutes, Mr. Brandon. Your father wants to see you in his study." Brandon's jaw tightened, but he nodded. He set down his cup and left without another word. The next 2 weeks fell into an uncomfortable rhythm. Richard kept his distance, but Emily often caught him watching her with an expression that made her chest ache. Brandon, on the other hand, seemed determined to prove she didn't belong. At dinners, he'd ask questions designed to highlight their differences. "Ever been to the opera, Emily?" "No. We go every season. Dad has a private box." "What's your degree in?" "Oh, you didn't go to college. Well, not everyone can, I suppose." "That's a nice blouse. Is it from Walmart?" Each comment was a tiny cut, carefully placed, but Emily refused to let him see her bleed. She'd answer calmly, meeting his eyes, never giving him the satisfaction of watching her shrink. "No, I haven't been to the opera, but I've heard coyotes singing at night, and I bet that's just as beautiful. I didn't go to college, but I can grow food from dirt, fix a broken tractor, and keep a farm running on almost nothing. Can you do any of that?" "It is from Walmart." At least I know the value of $1. Richard would watch these exchanges with something like approval. Mrs. Chen would hide smiles behind her napkin, and Brandon would look increasingly frustrated, like he couldn't figure out why his weapons weren't working. But there were other moments too. Moments that confused Emily more than the hostility one evening. She found Brandon in the library, surrounded by papers, looking more tired than she'd ever seen him. "What's all this?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, startled. "Company reports? Dad wants me to actually understand the business before I inherit it." He laughed bitterly. Apparently, showing up to board meetings drunk isn't sufficient preparation. Emily walked closer, looking at the papers. Agricultural projections? Yeah, none of it makes sense. Which part? Brandon pointed to a chart. This. Why would we invest in drought-resistant crops when irrigation is cheaper? Emily leaned over, studying the numbers. Because irrigation depends on water rights. Those are getting more expensive every year. Drought-resistant crops are a long-term investment. You pay more now, but you save later. Brandon stared at her. How do you know that? I grew up on a farm. Remember, we couldn't afford irrigation. We had to work with what we had. She pointed to another section. And this, your soil quality reports. You're over-fertilizing. That'll kill your yields in 3 years. We have agricultural consultants who... Your consultants are selling you fertilizer. Of course they say you need more. Emily straightened up. Look, I don't know anything about running a company, but I know farming. And this is wasteful. Something shifted in Brandon's expression. Not gratitude exactly, but respect. Real respect. Would you... He hesitated. Would you look at the rest of these? Tell me what else we're doing wrong. Emily considered him for a long moment. Then she pulled up a chair. Sure. They worked until past midnight. Emily pointed out inefficiencies, explained techniques she'd learned from Miss Rose, suggested alternatives. Brandon listened, actually listened, taking notes and asking intelligent questions. Around 11, he ordered pizza, because I can't think on an empty stomach, and they ate straight from the box. Papers spread around them like confetti. You know, Brandon said through a mouthful of pepperoni. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone desperate, I guess. Someone who'd act grateful and submissive because we're paying off your debts. He wiped his hands on a napkin. But you're not like that. You don't act like you owe us anything. I don't owe you anything, Emily said. Your father made a deal. I'm holding up my end. That doesn't mean I have to pretend to be someone I'm not. Most people would. I'm not most people. Brandon smiled. A real smile. Not his usual smirk. Yeah, I'm starting to figure that out. It was the first genuinely pleasant evening Emily had spent in the mansion. When she finally went to bed, she felt something unfamiliar, hope that maybe this wouldn't be completely unbearable. But that night, the dreams came back. She was small, holding someone's hand. A man's hand, large and warm. They were in a store. Bright lights, lots of people, music playing from speakers overhead. The man was singing along, his voice off-key but happy. Then his hand was gone. She was alone, surrounded by tall aisles that seemed to stretch forever. People moving past her, not seeing her. She called out, "Daddy! Daddy!" But her voice was too small, swallowed by the noise. Someone grabbed her hand, not the right hand. This one was cold, pulling her toward the exit. She tried to pull away, tried to scream, but Emily woke up gasping, tears streaming down her face. The pendant at her throat felt burning hot, like it was trying to tell her something, in his study. Richard Caldwell stared at a photo from a security camera, the last image ever captured of his daughter, Sophie, 5 years old, standing in a supermarket, looking back over her shoulder, looking for him. And in his room, Brandon lay awake, staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the feeling that he'd known Emily his entire life, that somehow, impossibly, she'd always been there, just out of reach. Richard Caldwell stood in his study at 3 a.m, a glass of whiskey untouched on his desk, staring at 2 photographs side by side. The first, Sophie at 5 years old, her bright smile showing a gap where she'd lost her first tooth. The second, a candid shot of Emily from dinner last week, laughing at something Mrs. Chen had said. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. The angle of the jaw, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners, even the way she held her head when she was thinking, slightly tilted, like she was listening to something no one else could hear. Richard had spent 20 years chasing ghosts. He'd followed leads that went nowhere, hired investigators who found nothing, clung to hope even when everyone told him to let go. He'd become an expert at recognizing false hope, at protecting himself from the devastating crash that followed every dead end. But this felt different. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 3 years. Dawson Investigations. Marcus, it's Richard Caldwell. A pause. Richard, it's been a while. I need you to investigate someone discreetly. Who? A young woman named Emily Harper, 25 years old. I need everything. Birth records, adoption papers if they exist, DNA analysis, and Marcus. No one can know about this, not even her. Another pause. Longer this time. You think you found her. It wasn't a question. Marcus Dawson had been the lead investigator on Sophie's case for the first 5 years. He knew Richard's voice, knew what hope sounded like wrapped in fear. I don't know what I found, Richard said quietly. That's what I need you to tell me. I'll start immediately. Richard hung up and looked at the photographs again. Then he did something he'd sworn he'd never do. He opened Emily's bedroom door while she slept and carefully lifted a hairbrush from her nightstand. 3 strands of hair. That's all Marcus would need. As Richard closed the door behind him, he felt like a thief, but he couldn't ask her directly. Couldn't bear to see hope bloom in her eyes only to crush it if he was wrong. Better to know first. Better to be sure. He didn't see the figure watching from the end of the hallway. Victoria Caldwell had always been a light sleeper. It came from years of staying alert, of making sure she was always one step ahead of her brother in the family business. So when she heard Richard's study door open at 3 a.m, she was already awake. She watched him slip into Emily's room, watched him emerge with something in his hand, watched him return to his study with the careful movements of someone carrying something precious. Victoria's stomach turned to ice. She'd seen the way Richard looked at Emily, had noticed the pendant, that damned pendant. From the first day, she'd told herself it was paranoia, that Richard was seeing what he wanted to see because he couldn't let go of the past. But now he was investigating, which meant he believed it was possible, which meant Victoria's entire world was about to come crashing down. She retreated to her own room, her mind racing. 20 years. She'd spent 20 years building her position in the Caldwell empire, consolidating power while Richard was distracted by grief. She was CFO now, controlled the finances, had her fingers in every decision that mattered. If Sophie came back, if Emily was Sophie, all of that disappeared. Richard would give her everything. The prodigal daughter returned, the lost princess reclaiming her throne. Brandon would still inherit his share, but Victoria would be relegated to the sidelines, just like she'd been their entire childhood. Always second, always less important, always watching from the shadows while golden Sophie got all the attention, all the love. Victoria had been 12 when Sophie was born. She'd watched her mother light up in a way she never had for Victoria, watched her father carry the baby around like she was made of spun glass. And as Sophie grew, it only got worse. The little girl was charming, precocious, impossible not to love. Victoria had tried. God, she'd tried to love her niece. But every time she looked at Sophie, all she felt was that old familiar burn of resentment. And then came that day at the supermarket. Victoria had been visiting, had agreed to help with errands. She'd been walking ahead when she noticed someone watching Sophie with too much interest. A woman in a dark coat, moving with purpose toward the little girl. Victoria should have called out, should have grabbed Sophie's hand, should have done something. Instead, she'd turned away and kept walking, let the crowd swallow her up, told herself whatever happened wasn't her fault. When Richard came running, frantic, screaming Sophie's name, Victoria had played the confused aunt perfectly. She was right here. I don't understand. She was right here. The guilt had eaten at her for years, but so had the relief. With Sophie gone, Victoria could finally breathe, could finally be seen. And now this farm girl shows up wearing Sophie's pendant, and Richard's looking at her like the sun's come out after 20 years of darkness. No. Victoria pulled out her phone and made a call. Thompson. It's Victoria Caldwell. I need you to investigate someone named Emily Harper. I want everything. Where she came from, who raised her, any documentation you can find, and Thompson. I need you to find proof that she's not who my brother thinks she is. What if that proof doesn't exist? Then create it. I don't care what it costs. She hung up and poured herself a drink, her hands shaking. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Emily woke to find Mrs. Chen standing by her window, looking troubled. Is everything okay? Emily asked, sitting up. Miss Harper, I think I should tell you something. Mrs. Chen's voice was quiet. Mr. Caldwell came into your room last night. He took something from your nightstand. Emily's blood went cold. What? I saw him this morning, looking guilty, I think. Mrs. Chen hesitated. I think he took hair from your brush for DNA testing. Emily's first instinct was anger. How dare he, going through her things, taking samples without permission, treating her like some kind of science experiment. But the anger faded quickly, replaced by something more complicated. Fear, maybe, or hope. She couldn't tell anymore. Does he really think I'm her? Emily whispered. I don't know what he thinks, but he's desperate for answers. Mrs. Chen sat on the edge of the bed. Miss Harper, you should know. Miss Victoria has been asking questions about you, making phone calls. She doesn't seem happy about your presence here. I've noticed. Emily had felt Victoria's eyes on her during meals, cold and calculating. She was at dinner last week. Barely said 2 words to me. Miss Victoria has always been protective of her position in the family. If she thinks you threaten that, I don't want anything from this family, Emily said fiercely. I just want to save my farm and get back to my life. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true, because part of her, a part she didn't want to acknowledge, wanted to know the truth about that pendant, about the dreams that were getting stronger every night, about why she felt so strange in this house, like she was remembering something she'd never known. Be careful, Mrs. Chen said softly. The truth might not be what you expect, and not everyone will be happy when it comes out. After Mrs. Chen left, Emily sat alone, thinking. Then she made a decision. She found Brandon in the garage, working on a vintage car that clearly hadn't run in years. I need your help, she said. He looked up, grease on his hands, surprised. With what? Your father is investigating me behind my back, and your aunt doesn't want me here. I need to know what's really going on, and I need someone on my side. Brandon wiped his hands on a rag, studying her. Why me? Because you're the only person in this house who doesn't have a hidden agenda. You don't want me here, but you're honest about it. That's more than I can say for anyone else. Something like respect flickered in Brandon's eyes. What do you want to know? Everything? About Sophie? About what happened? About why your father thinks I might be her? Brandon was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, but this stays between us. Deal. They went to the library, and Brandon pulled out a box from a locked cabinet. Inside were newspaper clippings, police reports, photographs, the entire history of Sophie Caldwell's disappearance. As Emily read through them, her hands began to shake, because the more she learned, the more familiar it all felt. The supermarket, the crowd, the moment of separation. She'd dreamed it all, every single detail. Brandon, she whispered, I think your father might be right. Brandon stared at Emily like she'd just announced she was from Mars. What do you mean, you think he's right? Emily's hands trembled as she held a newspaper clipping from 20 years ago. The headline read, Caldwell heiress vanishes from supermarket. Below it was a grainy security photo of a little girl in a yellow sundress. This, Emily whispered, pointing to the image. I've seen this, in my dreams. The bright lights, the music playing overhead, the rows of cereal boxes taller than I was. I thought they were just nightmares, but her voice broke. What if they're memories? Brandon took the clipping from her hands, studying it. He'd seen this photo 1,000 times growing up, framed in his father's study like a shrine. But looking at it now, with Emily sitting next to him, the resemblance was undeniable. That doesn't prove anything, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Lots of kids went missing from supermarkets back then, and dreams aren't evidence. Then explain the pendant. Explain why I was found alone on a road when I was 5, with no memory of anything before that. Explain why. Emily stopped, pressing her hand to her chest. Explain why this house feels familiar. Why sometimes I walk down a hallway and know what's around the corner before I see it. Brandon set the clipping down carefully. You're scared. Of course I'm scared. Emily stood up, pacing. If I'm Sophie, then my entire life is a lie. Emily Harper doesn't exist. The farm, Miss Rose, everything I thought I knew about myself, it all becomes something else, something stolen. And if you're not Sophie, Emily stopped pacing, then I'm just some random girl who happens to look like your father's dead daughter, and I'm giving him false hope that's going to destroy him when the truth comes out. She looked at Brandon, her eyes wet. Either way, people get hurt. Brandon understood that feeling better than she knew. He'd spent his whole life watching his father chase ghosts, watching hope die a little more with each failed lead. The idea of putting Richard through that again made his stomach turn. But there was something else bothering him, something he'd been trying to ignore for weeks. Can I ask you something? Brandon said quietly. Sure. Do you feel it? When we're in the same room? Emily's eyes widened slightly. Feel what? Like there's a wall between us. Like something's preventing. He struggled for the words. My father wants us to get married. And you're not unattractive, smart, definitely funny when you're not mad at me. But every time I think about you that way, something in my brain just stops, like trying to walk through a door that's locked. Emily sat back down slowly. I thought I was the only one. You feel it too. Yes. And it's been driving me crazy because I can't explain it. She looked at him directly. What if that's why? What if we can't? Because we're not supposed to. The implications hung in the air between them. If they were siblings, that wall made perfect sense. Some deep, instinctive part of their brains recognizing something their conscious minds didn't know. We need answers, Brandon said finally. Real answers. Not whatever investigation my father's running behind your back, and definitely not whatever my aunt's planning. What do you mean? Whatever your aunt's planning. Brandon stood up, walking to the window. Victoria's always been ambitious. When Sophie disappeared, she stepped into the power vacuum, took over more and more of the company while Dad was distracted. Now she's CFO, controls all the money, has a say in every major decision. He turned back to Emily. If you're really Sophie, she loses all of that. Dad will hand you the keys to the kingdom. I don't want the keys to any kingdom, Emily said firmly. I want to save my farm and figure out who I am. I believe you. But Victoria won't. She's going to come after you. And she's not going to play fair. Emily thought about Mrs. Chen's warning, about the cold way Victoria had looked at her during dinner. So what do? We investigate ourselves. Find the truth before either of them can manipulate it. Brandon pulled out his phone. I know people. Private investigators who owe me favors from back when I was paying them to keep my screw-ups out of the tabloids. We'll start with Miss Rose. Find out exactly where and how she found you. Miss Rose doesn't remember much. She was already older when she took me in. Then we find other records. Hospital visits, social services, anything official that might tell us where you came from. Brandon's expression was determined in a way Emily had never seen before. My father's investigator will focus on DNA and matching records. Victoria's people will focus on discrediting you. But us, we're going to focus on the truth wherever it leads. Emily studied him. Why are you helping me? Honestly, I don't know. Brandon sat back down, running his hand through his hair. Maybe because you're the first person in years who's treated me like a human being instead of a wallet. Maybe because I'm tired of watching my father torture himself. Or maybe, he paused, maybe because some part of me already knows you're my sister, and I'm trying to protect you before Victoria tears you apart. Something warm bloomed in Emily's chest. Not attraction. That wall was still there, solid and unmovable. But something else. Something that felt like family. Thank you, she said softly. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get messy. Brandon stood up, offering his hand. Partners? Emily took it. Partners. That afternoon, Brandon drove Emily to the farm. It was the first time he'd been back since that initial visit, and seeing it in daylight was different. The field stretched out golden and peaceful, the old farmhouse looking small but sturdy against the horizon. Miss Rose was sitting on the porch, a blanket over her lap. Despite the warm weather, She looked frailer than Emily remembered, her skin almost translucent in the sunlight. Sweetheart. Her face lit up when she saw Emily. Then her expression became uncertain as Brandon followed. And you brought company? Miss Rose, this is Brandon Caldwell. He's helping me with something. Brandon extended his hand. It's nice to meet you, ma'am. Miss Rose shook it with a grip that was surprisingly strong. Her eyes, though clouded with age, were sharp as she studied him. Caldwell, you're the boy she's supposed to marry. That's the plan. Though I think we both know it's not happening. Miss Rose looked between them, and something like understanding crossed her face. No, I suppose it's not. She patted the seat next to her. Sit down, both of you. I think it's time I told you some things I should have said years ago. Emily and Brandon exchanged glances, then sat. Miss Rose was quiet for a long moment, her weathered hands folded in her lap. When I found you, Emily, you were standing in the middle of Route 44, 5 years old, covered in dirt, crying so hard you could barely breathe. You kept saying Daddy over and over, but when I asked where he was, you couldn't tell me. Did you call the police? Brandon asked. Of course I did. They came out, took a report, asked you questions, but you couldn't remember anything. Not your last name, not where you lived, nothing. Just that your name was Emily. Miss Rose's voice grew softer. The police said they'd look into it, but days passed, then weeks. Nobody came looking for you. It was like you'd appeared out of nowhere. What about social services? Brandon pressed. They came eventually, but I told them I'd take care of you while they searched for your family. I filled out all the paperwork, went to all the meetings, and slowly, you stopped asking about your daddy, started calling me Grandma, became part of my life. Miss Rose looked at Emily with tears in her eyes. I should have pushed harder, should have kept asking questions. But you were happy here and I was lonely, and I told myself it was meant to be. Emily took Miss Rose's hand. You saved me. You gave me a home when I had nothing. Did I? Or did I steal you from someone who was looking for you? Miss Rose turned to Brandon. Your father thinks she's his daughter. Doesn't he? That's why you're really here. Brandon nodded slowly. It's possible. The pendant, Miss Rose said. I always wondered about that pendant. Too expensive for a lost child. Too precious. I should have known. You didn't know, Emily said firmly. You couldn't have known. But now you need to know. Miss Rose squeezed Emily's hand. Go find your truth, sweetheart. Whatever it is, whoever you are, you'll always be my Emily, but you deserve to know where you came from. They stayed another hour, collecting any documents Miss Rose had kept. The police report, medical records, school enrollment forms, everything that might help piece together the puzzle. As they drove back to the mansion, Brandon said, She loves you, really loves you. I know. If you are Sophie, and you go back to being a Caldwell, what happens to her? Emily looked out the window at the passing landscape. She comes with me. She's my mother, DNA or not. And if your father has a problem with that, he won't. Brandon interrupted. Trust me. If you're Sophie, Dad will give you anything you want, including a place for Miss Rose. Emily smiled slightly. Good, because that's non-negotiable. They drove in comfortable silence for a while. Then Brandon said, You know what's weird? What? This? Us. 2 weeks ago, I would have done anything to get out of this arrangement. Now I'm sitting here helping you prove you're my sister, and it feels right, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Maybe it is, Emily said. Maybe we've been looking for each other without knowing it. Brandon glanced at her. Then back at the road. Yeah, maybe we have. When they got back to the mansion, Richard was waiting in the foyer, his expression unreadable. We need to talk, he said. All of us, now. Richard's study felt smaller with all three of them inside. Emily sat on the leather couch, Brandon beside her, while Richard paced by the window like a caged animal. The tension was thick enough to choke on. I owe you both an apology, Richard began, his back still to them. Emily, I had no right to take your hair without permission. It was invasive and dishonest. And I'm sorry. Emily's jaw tightened. You could have just asked me. I know, but I was afraid. Richard finally turned around, and Emily was shocked to see tears in his eyes. I've spent 20 years chasing false leads. Every time I got my hopes up, they were crushed. I couldn't..." His voice broke. "I couldn't bear to see hope in your eyes, and then have to destroy it if I was wrong." Brandon leaned forward. "So what did you find?" Richard walked to his desk and pulled out a manila folder. His hands shook as he opened it. "The preliminary DNA results came back this morning. They're not conclusive yet. We need more comprehensive testing. But the markers they've analyzed so far show a 92% probability that Emily and I share biological relationship." The room went silent. Emily felt like she was falling, even though she was sitting down. 92%. Not certainty, but close. So close. "That's not possible," she whispered. "I'm Emily Harper. I've always been Emily Harper." "No," Richard said gently. "You've been Emily Harper for 20 years. But before that," he pulled out a photograph from the folder, the same one Emily had seen in the library. "Before that, you were Sophie Caldwell, my daughter." Brandon stood up abruptly, walking to the window. His shoulders were tense, his breathing uneven. Emily wanted to reach out to him but didn't know how. "This doesn't make sense," Brandon said to the glass. "If someone took Sophie, why would they just abandon her on a road? Why not ransom her? Why not..." He stopped, his reflection showing confusion and anger. "Why would anyone do that?" "I don't know," Richard admitted. "That's what we need to find out. Marcus is investigating the Route 44 area, talking to people who lived there 20 years ago, checking old police reports." He looked at Emily. "But I need to know. Do you remember anything? Anything at all about how you ended up there?" Emily closed her eyes, trying to reach into that fog that had always surrounded her earliest memories. There were fragments, pieces that never quite fit together. But now, with this new information, maybe they could. "I remember being cold," she said slowly. "It was nighttime, I think. Or maybe early morning. There was a car, not the inside, but I remember seeing taillights driving away, red lights getting smaller." She pressed her fingers to her temples, "And I remember being so scared. Not just lost scared, but wrong scared, like something bad had happened." "Anything else?" Richard's voice was urgent but trying to stay gentle. "A face? A voice?" "No, Emily stopped. There was something else. Something she'd pushed away for years because it felt like a nightmare, not a memory. There was a woman. I couldn't see her face clearly, but she was angry. She kept saying, 'I'm sorry, I'm sorry,' but she didn't sound sorry. She sounded relieved." Richard went pale. "What did she look like?" "I don't know. It's all blurry. But she had a fancy coat. Dark, expensive looking." Emily opened her eyes, frustrated. "That's all I can remember. Everything before that is just blank." Brandon turned from the window. "We need to talk about Victoria." "What about her?" Richard frowned. "She's been making calls, hiring investigators to dig up dirt on Emily." Brandon's expression was hard. "Mrs. Chen heard her on the phone talking about proving Emily's not Sophie. She's terrified of what this means for her position in the company." Richard's face went from pale to red. "She's doing what?" "Think about it, Dad. Victoria was there that day at the supermarket. She was supposed to be watching Sophie while you paid for groceries." Brandon's voice was careful, like he was approaching something dangerous. "What if it wasn't an accident? What if Victoria..." "Stop." Richard's voice was sharp. "I know my sister has her flaws, but she couldn't..." But even as he said it, doubt crept into his expression. Could she? Emily thought about the woman in her fragmented memory, the expensive coat, the voice saying, "I'm sorry," without meaning it. Victoria always wore expensive coats. Victoria had been there that day. "We need to confront her," Brandon said. "No." Richard held up his hand. "Not yet. If Victoria was involved, confronting her now will just give her time to cover her tracks. We need more evidence first." "Then what do we do?" Emily asked. Richard looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something shift in his expression. Not just hope this time, but recognition, like he was really seeing her, past the surface, to something deeper. "We help you remember," he said softly. "The human brain doesn't forget, Emily. The memories are there, locked away. We just need to find the key." That night, Emily couldn't sleep again. But this time, she didn't fight the dreams. She let them come, reaching into the darkness of her own mind. searching for the truth. The supermarket took shape around her, vivid and real. She was small, everything towering above her. The floor was shiny white tile that squeaked under her new shoes, red shoes with velvet straps that she was so proud of. Daddy was holding her hand, humming along to the music playing overhead. He smelled like coffee and cologne, and his hand was warm and safe. "Stay close, sweetheart," he said. But then his phone rang. He let go of her hand to answer it, just for a second. "Hold on, Sophie, don't move." But she saw something interesting. A display of toys at the end of the aisle, just a few steps away. She'd only look and come right back. She walked toward the display, reaching for a stuffed elephant with big ears. When she turned around, Daddy was gone. Panic hit her like ice water. "Daddy! Daddy!" People moved past her, tall and fast, and not seeing her. She tried to find him, turning in circles, everything looking the same. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. Then a hand grabbed hers. Relief flooded through her. "Daddy." But it wasn't Daddy. It was Aunt Victoria. "Come on," Victoria said, her voice tight and strange. "Let's go find your father." But they didn't go find Daddy. They went out a different door, into the parking lot where the air was cold and smelled like gasoline. Victoria's hand was too tight, pulling her along too fast. "Aunt Victoria, you're hurting me." "I'm sorry," Victoria said. But she didn't sound sorry. She sounded scared and angry. "I'm so sorry, Sophie, but I can't. I just can't." They reached a car, and Victoria opened the back door. "Get in. I want Daddy. Your father doesn't—" Victoria stopped, her face twisting. "Just get in the car." Sophie started to cry. She tried to pull away, but Victoria was too strong. She practically shoved Sophie into the back seat and closed the door. They drove for a long time. Sophie cried until her throat hurt, until her eyes were swollen, until she couldn't cry anymore. Victoria didn't say anything, just kept driving, her hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Finally, they stopped. It was dark now, the sun long gone. Victoria opened the door and pulled Sophie out. They were on a road, empty fields on both sides. No houses, no lights, nothing. "I'm sorry," Victoria said again, and this time there were tears on her face. "I can't keep you. I thought I could, but I can't. Someone will find you. Someone good. Someone better than—" She stopped, backing toward the car. "I'm sorry, Sophie. I'm so sorry." Then she was in the car, driving away. The taillights got smaller and smaller until they disappeared completely, and Sophie stood alone on Route 44, crying for a daddy who couldn't hear her. Emily woke up screaming. Brandon burst through her door, followed seconds later by Mrs. Chen and Richard. They found her sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face, her whole body shaking. "She took me," Emily gasped. "Victoria took me. She drove me out there and left me. It was her. It was always her." Richard's face went white, then red, then white again. His hands clenched into fists. Brandon sat on the edge of her bed. "You remember everything. The supermarket, the parking lot, the drive. She was crying, but she did it anyway. She left me there like I was garbage she needed to throw away." Emily looked at Richard and saw her own horror reflected in his eyes. "Your sister stole 20 years from us." Richard's voice was barely a whisper. "Where is she?" "In the guest wing," Mrs. Chen said quietly. "She arrived this evening while you were in your study. Said she wanted to check in on things. More like check on whether her secrets are still buried," Brandon said darkly. Richard stood up, and Emily had never seen such cold fury on anyone's face. "Brandon, call the police, Mrs. Chen. Make sure Victoria doesn't leave, Emily." He looked at her, and his expression softened. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you. It wasn't your fault," Emily said, but her voice shook. "Yes, it was. I let go of your hand. And my sister—" He couldn't finish. "I'll make this right. I promise you, Sophie. I'll make this right." It was the first time he'd called her Sophie instead of Emily, and somehow it felt right. The formal dining room of the Caldwell mansion had hosted countless business dinners, charity galas, and family gatherings over the years, but it had never felt quite like this. Charged with an electricity that made the air itself seem dangerous, Richard had insisted on doing this properly, not in the middle of the night with accusations flying and emotions raw, but the next evening with witnesses present and everything documented. He'd invited the family lawyer, Marcus Dawson, the investigator, and deliberately told Victoria it was a family dinner to discuss Emily's future. Victoria arrived exactly on time, dressed immaculately in a gray suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. She kissed Richard's cheek, nodded politely to Brandon, and looked at Emily with an expression that was carefully neutral. "Emily, how lovely to see you again," Victoria said, her voice smooth as silk. "I hope you're settling in well." Emily felt Brandon tense beside her. She wanted to scream, to throw her wine glass, to demand answers, but Richard had asked her to wait, to let him handle this properly, and she owed him that much. "Please, everyone sit," Richard said, his voice giving nothing away. They took their seats around the long mahogany table. Mrs. Chen served the first course, a delicate soup that Emily couldn't have tasted if her life depended on it. The conversation was painfully polite, almost surreal given what was about to happen. "So, Richard," Victoria said, dabbing her mouth with a napkin, "what did you want to discuss about Emily's future? Have you and Brandon set a wedding date?" "There won't be a wedding," Richard said quietly. Victoria's eyebrows rose. "Oh, has the arrangement fallen through? I suppose it was rather unconventional to begin with." "The arrangement has changed, because new information has come to light." Richard set down his spoon with deliberate care. "Emily, would you mind showing Victoria your pendant?" Emily's hand went to her throat, pulling out the gold circle with the letter S. She watched Victoria's face carefully, for just a fraction of a second, so quick that someone who wasn't looking for it might have missed it. Victoria's mask slipped. Pure terror flashed across her features before she got it under control. "That's a lovely piece," Victoria said, but her voice had changed, tighter. "Family heirloom." "In a way," Richard said. "I had 2 of them made 20 years ago. One for me." He pulled out his own pendant, "and one for my daughter Sophie, the day she disappeared. She was wearing hers." The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. "Richard, what are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm telling you that DNA tests confirm with 92% certainty that Emily Harper is Sophie Caldwell. My daughter, your niece." Richard's voice was steady, but Emily could hear the rage beneath it, carefully controlled. "The daughter who disappeared from a supermarket 20 years ago while you were supposed to be watching her. That's wonderful news." Victoria's voice was too bright, too forced. "Sophie is alive. This is a miracle, Richard. We should be celebrating, not..." "Why are you all looking at me like that?" "Because Sophie remembers," Brandon said coldly. "She remembers everything." The color drained from Victoria's face. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible. She was too young. 5-year-olds don't retain memories like that." "But I do," Emily said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I remember you taking my hand in the supermarket. I remember you telling me we were going to find my father. But instead, you took me to the parking lot. I remember the car ride, how tight you held my wrist. And I remember you leaving me on that road in the dark, crying and scared and alone." Victoria stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "You're lying. This is some kind of scheme to take my place in the company, Richard. Can't you see what she's doing? She's manipulating you." "Sit down, Victoria." Richard's voice was ice. "I won't sit here and be accused of..." "Sit down." This time it wasn't a request. Victoria slowly righted her chair and sat, but her hands were shaking visibly now. Marcus Dawson opened a folder and pulled out several documents. "Miss Caldwell, we've been conducting an investigation. We pulled phone records from 20 years ago. In the week before Sophie's disappearance, you made 17 calls to a burner phone. That phone was used only for 2 weeks, then never again. I don't know what you're talking about." We also found financial records. 3 days after Sophie disappeared, you made a cash withdrawal of $50,000 when questioned at the time. You said it was for a real estate investment. We can't find any record of such an investment. Victoria's face had gone from white to gray. "This is circumstantial. This proves nothing." "You're right," Marcus agreed, "which is why we also tracked down the woman who owned that burner phone. Her name is Linda Kowalski. She worked as a private caregiver 20 years ago, and she's willing to testify that you hired her to take a child." a little girl with dark hair and dark eyes, and leave her somewhere she'd be found but not traced back to you. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun. Victoria's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Linda got cold feet. Marcus continued. She took the money, agreed to meet you at the supermarket, take the child when you signaled, but when she actually saw Sophie, saw how scared she was, how young, she couldn't go through with it. She drove for an hour, then left Sophie on that road and disappeared. She's lived with the guilt ever since. When we found her, she broke down immediately. This is absurd, Victoria finally managed. Why would I do such a thing? Sophie was my niece. I loved her. Did you? Richard's voice cracked like a whip. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you saw an opportunity. With Sophie gone, you could step into the power vacuum, take over more of the company while I was destroyed by grief. And it worked, didn't it? For 20 years. It worked perfectly. You don't understand, Victoria said. And for the first time, her voice was raw, desperate. You've never understood. Do you know what it was like growing up in this family? Being the spare, the backup, the one nobody really wanted. Mother only had eyes for you. And then Sophie came along and it was even worse. This perfect little angel that everyone adored. So you kidnapped her. Brandon's voice was full of disgust. You destroyed our family because you were jealous of a 5-year-old. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Victoria's composure was crumbling. I just wanted her gone for a few hours. I thought if Sophie disappeared briefly, if there was a scare, Richard would realize how precious his family was. He'd pay more attention to the people who were actually there instead of always working, always building this empire. Tears were streaming down her face now. But then the woman I hired actually took her, and the police got involved, and I couldn't figure out how to fix it without admitting what I'd done. So you let us suffer, Richard said, his voice shaking. You let me tear myself apart with guilt. You let Brandon grow up without his sister. You let Emily, Sophie, grow up thinking she had no family, no identity. You stole 20 years from all of us because you were too much of a coward to admit your mistake. Victoria was sobbing now, her makeup running, her perfect facade completely shattered. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant... Sorry. Emily stood up, her whole body trembling with rage. You're sorry. Do you have any idea what you did to me? I spent 20 years not knowing who I was, where I came from, why I was alone. I had nightmares every single night about a father I couldn't remember. And you... Her voice broke. You were there the whole time. You knew. You could have fixed this at any point, but you chose not to because it was convenient for you. Emily, please. My name is Sophie. The words exploded out of her. My name is Sophie Caldwell, and you took that from me. You took everything from me. Richard stood, walking around the table until he was standing directly in front of his sister. When he spoke, his voice was cold and final. You are no longer part of this family. You're fired from the company, effective immediately. You will surrender all access, all keys, all authority, and then you will leave this house and never come back. Richard, please, the only reason I'm not having you arrested right now is because Sophie asked me not to. She said she didn't want our family's pain to become public entertainment. But make no mistake, if you ever try to contact any of us again, if you ever try to defend yourself or justify what you did, I will personally make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison. Do you understand me? Victoria looked around the table, desperate, searching for an ally. But Brandon looked at her with pure disgust. Emily with betrayed rage. Mrs. Chen, standing by the door, with disappointment. Even the lawyer and investigator looked at her like she was something that had crawled out from under a rock. I understand, Victoria whispered. Then get out of my house. Victoria stood on shaking legs and walked toward the door. As she passed Emily, she stopped. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I really am sorry. I was young and stupid and jealous, and I made a choice that destroyed everything if I could take it back. But you can't, Emily said. So save your apologies. They mean nothing. Victoria nodded once and left. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like the end of an era. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Richard turned to Emily, to Sophie, and opened his arms. She walked into them and finally, after 20 years, felt like she'd come home. The days following Victoria's exile passed in a blur of emotions that Sophie couldn't begin to untangle. She'd started thinking of herself as Sophie now, though Emily still felt like part of her identity, a piece she wasn't ready to let go of completely. Richard had given her space, but she could feel him watching her constantly, like he was afraid she'd disappear again if he looked away. Brandon had become fiercely protective, staying close even when she didn't ask, and Mrs. Chen had taken to bringing her tea at odd hours, sitting with her in comfortable silence when the weight of everything became too much. But there was one person Sophie needed to see, one conversation she'd been putting off because it terrified her more than anything else. Miss Rose. Sophie found Richard in his study late one evening, staring at the photograph of 5-year-old Sophie that he kept on his desk. "I need to bring Miss Rose here," Sophie said from the doorway. Richard looked up, and the hope in his eyes made her chest ache. "Of course, I'll send a car first thing tomorrow. I want to tell her myself. About everything. Are you sure I could—" "No." Sophie's voice was gentle but firm. "She deserves to hear it from me, and I need to figure out how to be both people, Emily and Sophie. I can't just erase 20 years like they didn't happen." Richard stood up and walked over to her. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the silver in his hair that had probably come from 2 decades of grief. But there was also something lighter now. Relief, maybe, or the beginning of peace. "You don't have to erase anything," he said softly. "Emily Harper is part of who you are. She's the strength you developed, the person you became when everything was taken from you. Sophie Caldwell is where you came from, but Emily Harper is who you fought to be." He paused. "You can be both. You should be both." Tears pricked Sophie's eyes. "What if Miss Rose is angry? What if she thinks I'm leaving her behind? Then we reassure her that's not happening. This is her home too, if she wants it to be. And if she doesn't, we'll make sure she's taken care of wherever she chooses to be." Richard's voice was firm. "You don't lose family when you find family, Sophie. You just have more people to love." The next day, Sophie and Brandon drove to the farm together. The fields looked different now. Not like home, exactly, but like a chapter of her life that was closing. It made her sad and grateful at the same time. Miss Rose was on the porch, looking smaller and frailer than Sophie remembered, when she saw them pull up. Her face lit up with a smile that quickly turned to confusion when she saw Sophie's expression. "Baby girl, what's wrong?" Sophie sat down next to her, taking the old woman's weathered hands in hers. Brandon stayed by the truck, giving them space but ready if she needed him. "I need to tell you something," Sophie began, her voice already shaking. "And I need you to hear all of it before you say anything, okay?" Miss Rose's eyes sharpened with concern, but she nodded. Sophie told her everything. The pendant, the DNA test, the memories that had come flooding back, Victoria's confession, the 20 years of lies, the truth about who she really was. She talked until her voice was hoarse, until tears were streaming down both their faces, until there was nothing left to say. When she finished, Miss Rose was silent for a long moment. Then she cupped Sophie's face in her hands. "I always wondered," she whispered. "I told myself you were just a lost little girl. But that pendant, I always wondered if maybe someone was looking for you, someone who loved you." Fresh tears spilled over. "And I was selfish. I kept you because I was lonely, because I loved you, because I told myself no one came looking. So maybe it was meant to be." "You weren't selfish," Sophie said fiercely. "You saved me. If you hadn't found me that night, I don't know what would have happened. You gave me a home, a family, a life. You taught me everything that matters. But I also kept you from your real family. You are my real family." Sophie's voice broke. "Blood doesn't make family. Love does. And you loved me when I had no one else. That makes you my mother. Miss Rose, that will always make you my mother." Miss Rose pulled Sophie into her arms, and they cried together. For the years lost, for the truth found, for the complicated mess of grief and joy that came with both. Finally, Miss Rose pulled back, wiping her eyes. "So what happens now? Now you come home with me, to the mansion. Richard wants you there. He says you're part of the family now. We can set up a room for you, get you better medical care, whatever you need. I'm not a charity case. Miss Rose said with a hint of her old stubbornness. "I know, you're my mother, and I want you with me." Sophie squeezed her hands. "Please, let me take care of you the way you took care of me." Miss Rose looked past Sophie to where Brandon was leaning against the truck. "And that boy, the one you were supposed to marry, he's my brother," Sophie said. And saying it out loud felt both strange and right. "We figured it out before things got complicated." Miss Rose let out a shaky laugh. "Lord have mercy. This family is a mess. Pretty much. All right then." Miss Rose stood up with Sophie's help. "Let's go home." Both our homes. Back at the mansion, the full weight of everything finally crashed down on Sophie. She'd been holding it together for days. For Richard, for Brandon, for Miss Rose. But alone in her room that night, the dam finally broke. She collapsed on her bed, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. 20 years. 20 years of not knowing, of feeling incomplete, of searching for something she couldn't name. And now that she'd found it, she didn't know how to process it all. There was a soft knock on her door. Before she could answer, Brandon slipped inside. "Hey," he said quietly, sitting on the edge of her bed. "I heard you crying." "I'm fine," Sophie lied through her tears. "No, you're not. And that's okay." Brandon hesitated, then awkwardly patted her shoulder. "You don't have to be fine. This is huge. You're allowed to fall apart." Sophie sat up, wiping her face. "I don't know who I am anymore. I spent my whole life being Emily Harper, and now I'm supposed to be Sophie Caldwell, but I don't know how to be her. I don't remember being her. So, don't try to be her. Be you, the person you are right now with all the pieces put together." Brandon's voice was unusually gentle. "You're not replacing Emily with Sophie. You're just adding context, adding history. But what if I mess it up? What if I can't be the daughter Dad needs? What if I disappoint everyone? Then you'll mess up and disappoint people. That's what family does." Brandon smiled slightly. "Trust me, I'm an expert at disappointing Dad. But he loves me anyway, and he'll love you anyway too. No matter what." Sophie looked at her brother, her actual brother, which still felt surreal, and felt something shift inside her. "When did you get wise?" "About 2 weeks ago when a farm girl showed up and called me out on all my crap." Brandon's smile widened. "You changed me, you know. Made me want to be better. And I didn't even know you were my sister then. I think some part of you knew. Some part of both of us." "Yeah, maybe." Brandon stood up. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be another weird day in the ongoing saga of the incredibly dysfunctional Caldwell family." "Brandon?" "Yeah, thank you. For being here. For believing me. You're my sister," he said simply. "Where else would I be?" After he left, Sophie lay in the dark, thinking about everything that had happened. She thought about Victoria, whose jealousy had destroyed so many lives. She thought about Richard, who'd never stopped searching. She thought about Miss Rose, who'd loved her without question. And she thought about Brandon, who'd somehow become her closest ally. She pulled out the pendant and held it in the moonlight. The S gleamed softly. Sophie, Emily, both names, both identities, both real. Maybe Richard was right. Maybe she didn't have to choose. Maybe she could be both. The farm girl who knew the value of hard work, and the heiress who'd been born into privilege. The lost child and the found daughter. The survivor and the beloved. For the first time since the truth came out, Sophie felt something other than confusion and fear. She felt whole. In the morning, she'd start figuring out what that meant. She'd learn to navigate her new life, rebuild relationships, forge new ones. She'd honor both the woman who raised her and the father who never stopped looking. But tonight, she just let herself feel it. The grief for what was lost. The joy for what was found. The strange, beautiful mess of being both Emily and Sophie. And for the first time in 20 years, she fell asleep without nightmares. 3 weeks after Victoria's exile, the Caldwell mansion felt different. Not lighter, exactly. The weight of 20 years couldn't evaporate overnight, but warmer somehow, like a house that had been holding its breath for too long was finally learning to breathe again. Miss Rose had settled into a suite on the second floor, near Sophie's room. The old woman had been hesitant at first, uncomfortable with the luxury, but Sophie had insisted, within days. Miss Rose had somehow made the sterile guest room feel like home. Quilts on the bed, plants on the windowsill, the smell of her lavender sachets filling the air. Richard visited her every morning, bringing coffee and sitting with her for an hour. At first, the conversations were awkward. Two people who loved the same person trying to figure out how to love each other. But gradually, they found common ground. Stories about Sophie, both as the little girl Richard remembered and the young woman Miss Rose had raised. She used to hate bedtime, Miss Rose told him one morning, her eyes distant with memory. Would fight me tooth and nail every night. Said there was too much to do, too much to see, didn't want to miss a single moment. Richard smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. Sophie was the same way. We'd read 3 books, sing 5 songs, get glasses of water, anything to stay awake just a little longer. His voice caught. I used to get frustrated, thought she was being difficult. Now I'd give anything for one more bedtime battle. You'll have them again, Miss Rose said gently. Maybe not bedtime battles, but moments, new memories. That's what matters now. Making new memories instead of mourning the old ones. Richard took her hand. This woman who'd done what he couldn't, kept his daughter safe. Thank you for everything you did for her, for loving her when she had no one. She was easy to love, Miss Rose said simply. Still is. Brandon had thrown himself into the company with an intensity that surprised everyone, especially Richard. He arrived early, stayed late, asked intelligent questions, and actually implemented the suggestions Sophie had made about sustainable farming practices. One afternoon, Sophie found him in the library, surrounded by agricultural reports and looking genuinely excited about crop rotation strategies. "Who are you and what did you do with my brother?" she teased. Brandon looked up, grinning. "Funny, but seriously, look at this." He pulled her over to show her a proposal he'd been working on. What if we converted 20% of our land to educational farms? Places where kids from the city could come learn where food actually comes from, get their hands dirty, see the work that goes into it. Sophie read through the proposal, impressed. "This is really good, Brandon." "Yeah." He looked almost shy, which was bizarre on someone who'd spent years projecting nothing but arrogance. "I was thinking we could name the first one after Miss Rose, the Rose Harper Educational Farm, since she taught you everything about working the land." Sophie felt tears prick her eyes. She'd love that. "I know I was a spoiled ass," Brandon said quietly. "I know I wasted years of my life being useless. But you, finding you, getting to know you, it made me want to be better, made me want to deserve being your brother. You already deserve it," Sophie said, bumping his shoulder with hers. "You stood by me when you didn't have to. You helped me find the truth even when it was scary. That's what brothers do." Brandon looked at her for a long moment. "I missed out on so much. 20 years of having a sister. He stopped, his voice thick. "I'm sorry. I know it's not my fault. But I'm sorry anyway. Sorry I wasn't there when you were growing up. Sorry I didn't protect you." "Hey," Sophie made him look at her. "You're protecting me now. You're here now. That's what matters." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of easy quiet that only comes with family. Then Brandon said, "Do you ever think about Victoria?" Sophie had been trying not to, but the truth was, she thought about her aunt every day. "Sometimes I'm still angry. Probably will be for a long time." "Me too. But also," Brandon struggled with the words, "I feel kind of sad for her. She spent 20 years building a life on a lie, and it all came crashing down. She lost everything. Family, career, respect. That has to be its own kind of hell. Are you saying we should forgive her?" "No, I don't think I can do that. Not yet. Maybe not ever." Brandon looked at the papers in front of him. "But I'm saying maybe we can understand why she did it without excusing what she did. She was jealous and petty and made a terrible choice. But she's also lived with that choice for 20 years. That's a long time to carry guilt." Sophie thought about the woman who'd sobbed in the dining room, makeup running, perfect facade shattered. "Do you think she really is sorry?" "Yeah, I do, but sorry doesn't fix what she broke." "No," Sophie agreed. "It doesn't." That evening, Richard called a family meeting. Sophie, Brandon, Miss Rose, and Mrs. Chen gathered in the living room, a space that had probably never been used for anything this informal before. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Richard began, standing by the fireplace, about this family, about the company, about the future, and I've made some decisions I want to share with you. Everyone leaned forward. First, I'm stepping back from daily operations, not retiring completely, but delegating more. Brandon, I'm making you Executive Vice President. You've earned it these past few weeks. You'll work directly with me, learn the business inside and out, and eventually take over when you're ready. Brandon looked stunned. Dad, thank you. I won't let you down. I know you won't. You're not the same person you were a month ago. None of us are. Richard turned to Sophie. Sophie, I want you to have options. You can come work for the company if you want, or you can pursue something else entirely. The farm, college, whatever you choose. But regardless, you'll receive your full share of everything. The trust that was set up for you when you were born. All of it. You're a Caldwell, and you deserve everything that comes with that. Sophie felt overwhelmed. I don't know what I want yet. That's okay. You have time to figure it out. But there's something else. Richard pulled out a document. I've established a foundation in your name. The Sophie Caldwell Foundation for Missing Children. It'll fund investigations, support families, and work with law enforcement to bring children home. Everything I learned searching for you, all the resources I have now, we're going to use them to help other families avoid 20 years of not knowing. Sophie couldn't speak. Tears rolled down her cheeks as the meaning of it sank in. Her pain, her loss, turned into something that could help others. That's beautiful, Miss Rose said softly. There's one more thing, Richard said, and his voice was uncertain now. I've been in contact with Victoria. The room went cold. Dad. What? Brandon started. Just listen, please. Richard held up his hand. She called me yesterday. She's going through intensive therapy, trying to deal with what she did and why she did it. She's not asking for forgiveness. She knows that's not something she can have right now. Maybe not ever. But she wanted me to know that she's setting up a trust in Sophie's name. Everything she has left, and it's substantial, is going to Sophie, all of it. I don't want her money, Sophie said immediately. I know, but she's not doing it for you to forgive her. She's doing it because it's the only thing she can do. The only way she can make even a small attempt at restitution. Richard looked at Sophie carefully. What you do with that money is entirely up to you. Use it. Donate it. Burn it. Your choice. But I wanted you to know. Sophie thought about it. About Victoria. Alone somewhere. Trying to make amends for something that could never truly be made right. About the little girl who'd grown up in the shadow of her older brother. Who'd made a terrible choice and lost everything. Put it in the foundation, Sophie said finally. The Missing Children's Foundation. Use her money to help find other kids, to bring other families back together. That feels right? Richard's eyes shone with pride. That feels perfect. Miss Rose reached over and took Sophie's hand. Brandon put his arm around her shoulders. Mrs. Chen, standing by the door, wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. I have one more thing to say, Richard continued. This family has been broken for 20 years. We've all been walking around with pieces missing, trying to function while incomplete. But now, he looked around the room, at each of them. Now we have a chance to build something new, not to replace what we lost, but to create something different, something stronger because of what we survived. I'd like that, Sophie said. A new family, one that includes everyone who loves each other, blood or not. To new beginnings, Brandon said, raising his glass of water in a toast. To new beginnings, they all echoed. That night, Sophie stood at her window, looking out over the estate that was now her home. The farm would always be part of her. That land had shaped who she was. But this place, with these people, was where she belonged now. She thought about forgiveness, about how it wasn't something you gave all at once, but something you worked toward. Maybe someday she'd be able to fully forgive Victoria. Maybe not, but she could at least try to understand, and maybe that was enough for now. Behind her, there was a soft knock. Richard stood in the doorway. Can't sleep? He asked. Just thinking. He came to stand beside her at the window. About what? About how strange life is. A month ago, I was Emily Harper, farm girl with no past. Now I'm Sophie Caldwell, with more past than I know what to do with. She looked at him, but also about how grateful I am. For Miss Rose, for Brandon, for you, for all of it, even the hard parts. Richard put his arm around her shoulders, and Sophie leaned into him, feeling safe in a way she couldn't remember ever feeling before. "Welcome home, Sophie," he said softly. "Welcome home." 6 months later, the autumn sun cast golden light across the fields that stretched behind the old farmhouse. The property looked different now, restored, revitalized, but still recognizably the place where Emily Harper had grown into the woman she'd become. The sign at the entrance read, "The Rose Harper Educational Farm, a Sophie Caldwell Foundation initiative." Sophie stood on the newly rebuilt porch, watching as a school bus pulled up the dirt road. 20 excited children poured out, their voices carrying on the crisp October air. This was the third group this week. City kids who'd never seen where their food came from, who thought milk came from cartons and vegetables from grocery stores. Brandon came up beside her, clipboard in hand, looking every bit the professional executive he'd become. But there was still that hint of mischief in his eyes when he smiled at her. "Ready for round 3? He asked. "Born ready," Sophie replied, pulling on her work gloves. They'd done this dance dozens of times now. Brandon handled the business side, logistics, scheduling, budgets, while Sophie taught the kids about soil and seeds and the patience required to grow something real. Together, they made a good team. Miss Sophie, a little girl from the previous week's group ran up, her mother trailing behind. "I planted the seeds you gave me and something's growing, look." She thrust out her phone, showing a photo of tiny green shoots emerging from a pot. Sophie knelt down to the girl's level. "That's amazing, Maria. You did that. You made something grow. Can I come back next week? Please." "Absolutely, we're always happy to have good farmers here." As Maria and her mother headed toward the barn for the tour, Sophie felt a hand on her shoulder. Miss Rose, moving slowly but steadily with her new cane, smiled at her. "She reminds me of you," the old woman said. "That same determination, that same light. You taught me that light," Sophie said, linking her arm through Miss Rose's. "Everything good about me, you put there. Nonsense. It was always in you. I just gave it room to grow." Miss Rose looked around the farm, her eyes misty. "Your mother would be so proud. Both your mothers. The one who gave you life and the one who gave you her heart." Sophie's birth mother had died when she was 2. She'd learned that from Richard, along with so many other pieces of her history. But knowing about her didn't diminish what Miss Rose meant to her. If anything, it made her more grateful for the woman who'd stepped in when she had no one. "Come on," Sophie said. "Let's go teach some kids how to milk a goat." "Lord help us all," Miss Rose muttered. But she was smiling. That evening, back at the Caldwell mansion, the family gathered for dinner. It had become a tradition. Sunday dinners where everyone put away their phones, their work, their distractions, and just existed together. Richard sat at the head of the table, looking healthier than Sophie had ever seen him. The weight he'd carried for 20 years had lifted, and though he'd never get back the time they'd lost, he'd stopped torturing himself over it. Instead, he focused on the time they had now. "I got the final numbers on the foundation's first quarter," he said, passing around a report. "We've helped reunite 12 families so far, 12 children home with their parents because of Sophie." "Because of us," Sophie corrected. "This isn't just me, Dad. It's all of us." Mrs. Chen brought out the main course, and the conversation flowed easily. Brandon talked about the new sustainable farming initiative he was implementing across all Caldwell properties. Miss Rose shared stories about the kids who'd visited the farm that week. Richard mentioned a board meeting where he'd finally convinced the old guard to invest in renewable energy. It felt normal, beautifully, wonderfully normal. After dinner, Sophie found herself in the library with Brandon. Both of them sprawled on the couches like they'd done this 1,000 times before. "Hey," Brandon said, looking uncharacteristically serious. "I've been meaning to tell you something." Sophie sat up, concerned. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, actually. Something's right." He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of a woman with warm eyes and a genuine smile. "Her name is Claire. She works for one of our partner organizations, helps coordinate community gardens in underserved neighborhoods. I met her at a conference last month." Sophie grinned. Brandon Caldwell, are you actually telling me about a girl you like? Not a hookup? Not a fling, but someone you actually like. He threw a pillow at her. Shut up. Yes. Okay, I actually like her. We've been talking for weeks and I don't know. I think this could be something real. Does Dad know? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. Brandon looked at her earnestly. You changed my life, Sophie. You made me want to be someone worth knowing. Someone who deserves a person like Claire. And I wanted you to know that. Wanted to say thank you. Sophie moved to sit next to him, leaning her head on his shoulder. You did that yourself. I just gave you a reason to start. Best reason I ever had, Brandon said quietly. Getting my sister back. They sat like that for a while, comfortable in the silence that only siblings could share. Then Brandon's phone buzzed. He looked at it and smiled. The kind of smile Sophie had never seen on his face before. Soft, genuine, a little bit nervous. That her? Sophie asked. Yeah. Go. Call her back. I'll cover for you if Dad asks where you went. Brandon squeezed her shoulder and left. Already dialing as he walked out, Sophie stayed in the library, surrounded by books and memories, both old and new. She thought about the person she'd been 6 months ago, confused, lost, trying to figure out where she fit. She thought about Victoria, who, according to Richard's carefully worded updates, was still in therapy, still trying to make peace with what she'd done. Sophie still wasn't sure how she felt about her aunt. The anger had dulled to something more complicated. Not forgiveness, not exactly, but maybe the beginning of understanding. Victoria had been broken in her own way, and that brokenness had shattered so many lives, but they were picking up the pieces now, building something new from the fragments. There was a soft knock on the doorframe. Richard stood there, looking uncertain in a way that still sometimes surprised her. Am I interrupting? Never, Sophie said, patting the couch beside her. Richard sat down, and for a moment, he just looked at her, really looked at her, like he was memorizing every detail. What? Sophie asked, self-conscious. His voice caught. I'm just so grateful you're here, that you're real. Some mornings I still wake up afraid this has all been a dream. It's real, Dad. I'm real. We're real. I know. But after 20 years of hoping and failing, it's hard to trust it sometimes. He took her hand. Your mother. Your birth mother. She would have loved you so much. Would have been so proud of the woman you've become. I wish you could have known her. Tell me about her, Sophie said. She'd heard stories before, but she never tired of them. Each one was a piece of the puzzle, a glimpse into the life she'd been born into. Richard smiled, his eyes distant with memory. She was fierce, stubborn as hell, which is where you get it from, but also kind. The kind that costs something. You know, she saw people, really saw them, and she made everyone around her want to be better. Like Miss Rose, Sophie said. Exactly like Miss Rose, I think. Richard paused, considering. I think maybe that's why you ended up with her. Maybe the universe knew you needed someone who loved like your mother loved. Someone who would see you. Do you believe that? In the universe having a plan? Richard thought about it. I don't know, but I believe in second chances. I believe in the possibility of healing, even when things seem broken beyond repair. And I believe that families, real families, are made of more than just blood. They're made of choice and love and showing up, day after day. Sophie leaned against him, feeling his arm come around her shoulders. I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. So much. More than I have words for. They sat like that until the light outside faded to dusk. Until Mrs. Chen came to tell them there was dessert if they wanted it. Until the moment became just one more, in a growing collection of moments they were building together. Later that night, Sophie stood in the garden behind the mansion, looking up at the stars. The pendant, her pendant, Sophie's pendant, caught the moonlight. She'd never take it off. It was the thread that connected all her pieces. Emily and Sophie, farm girl and heiress, lost and found. She heard footsteps and turned to see Richard, Brandon, and Miss Rose coming out to join her. Couldn't sleep either, Brandon asked. Just thinking, Sophie said. About what? Miss Rose wanted to know. Sophie looked at the three of them. Her father who'd never stopped searching, her brother who'd become her fiercest protector, and the woman who'd saved her life in every way that mattered. "About how lucky I am," she said. "I lost 20 years. That's a lot of time. A lot of memories I can never get back. But I also gained something. I got to be both people, Emily and Sophie. I got to learn what it means to work hard, to survive, to build something from nothing. And now I get to use all of that to be who I'm supposed to be." "And who's that?" Richard asked gently. Sophie smiled. "Someone who helps people find their way home. Someone who grows things. Someone who has a family that loves her. All of her. Every piece and part." Brandon pulled her into a hug. "Damn right we do." Miss Rose and Richard joined in, and they stood there in the garden, 4 people who'd found their way back to each other through 20 years of darkness, holding on tight to the light they'd finally found. Tomorrow, Sophie would go back to the farm and teach more children about the magic of making things grow. Brandon would continue transforming the company into something they could all be proud of. Richard would keep funding the foundation, bringing more families together. And Miss Rose would be there, steady and constant, reminding them all that love didn't need DNA to be real. But tonight, they were just a family, broken and mended, lost and found, but together, and that was more than enough. It was everything.